Hello and welcome back. It's no secret that I love retro style action figures. Toys that remind me of my original collection that was made up of toys from the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. One of the reasons I got back into collecting several years ago was because of the wide availability of these retro style figures from various companies, with original Star Wars 5 POA style, Secret Wars, Superpowers, and original Masters of the Universe style all making a comeback. In the past few months, I've received a wide variety of those retro style figures. So in today's video, let's take a look at what I've added to the collection. Power Stars from Boss Fight Studios is a series that I was on the fence on for a little while, but then I looked at some unboxings and reviews and decided that yes, I wanted to get this line. Boss Fight has designed these figures after the classic Superpowers line, something that McFarlane Toys has done recently with their Superpower series. And there's also an upcoming series of comic book character figures called Long Box Heroes, which uses this Superpowers design aesthetic. The Power Stars line features characters from King Features Syndicate comic strips. These characters have been used many times over the years, including in Filmation's Flash Gordon series, as well as the 80s cartoon Defenders of the Earth. But Power Stars decided to go right back to the original comic strip roots for these designs. So we have from left to right the Phantom, Flash Gordon, Prince Thun of the Lion Men, and Ming the Merciless. Let's start with the Flash Gordon characters. We'll get to the Phantom last because something horrifying just happened. But anyway, here's classic comic strip Ming. He's got a sword, a pistol, and a cloth goods cape. And he's got holsters and a little scabbard to hold his weapons. And these do have the classic Superpower style articulation, which is just hips, knees, shoulders, and the head. Just like Ming, Flash comes with a gun and a sword that he can holster on his belt. And he's the only figure to come with an alternate body part. They do give you an alternate head. This one has the headgear on that he wore in the comic strip, and this one does not. This one looks more like how he appeared in the Filmation cartoon. So this is the head that I prefer. And then we have Prince Thun of the Lion Men, who comes with a sword, but no place to hold the sword because he only wears this tattered loincloth. And unlike the Filmation animation model, which made Thun an actual lion man, this Thun more closely resembles the comic, where the lion men were a humanoid with lion-like features. They weren't actually literally lions. So now we come to the Phantom, who has his two pistols, and he has holsters on his belt to hold each of them. But when I went to move around the articulation on this figure, this happened. So I don't see why that would break unless there was a defect in the figure. That broke right off at the joint completely. So I'm just gonna glue that leg on for now. I'm not sure if I'll invest in another one because these are a bit pricey for their size. For just sitting on the shelf, the glued leg will be fine, but that is really aggravating. There was no indication that you would need heat to heat up these joints. I didn't have problems moving any of the other figures or any of the joints on this Phantom. This leg seems perfectly fine. So it had to be some sort of defect in that knee. So just be aware of that when you purchase these. Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back Retro Collection Bounty Hunters. These were all released as 2-packs several months apart since the end of 2022 into 2023. Boba Fett and Bossk came out first, then Dengar and IG-88, and recently Zuckuss and 4-LOM. And just like the original figures, Zuckuss and 4-LOM have their names swapped on the cards. And as you can see, these card backs follow the existing trends with the retro collection, having this terrible weathered finish around the cards, as well as the giant retro collection stickers obscuring the art. I cannot tell you how much I hate these card backs. That's why all my retro collection figures are being displayed loose. Here are the bounty hunters off their cards, and none of them really seem to have an issue holding their weapons. And out of all the various retro collection waves, these guys are my favorite. I always had a soft spot for the bounty hunters anyway, as did many of us, since they were such an mysterious and enigmatic group. This is the second release of Boba Fett in the retro collection. He got a single card release with the Empire Strikes Back wave, and now another release with the double pack with Bossk. Bossk was always one of my favorite Star Wars figures out of the entire line. Great design, great coloring, very unique looking. Dengar and IG-88. And Zuckuss and Forlom. Or is it Forlom and Zuckuss? And they did a nice job with the overcoat on Zuckuss. It looks and feels to me just like the original did. Universal Monsters reaction figures. I've had quite a few of these for a while because they do remind me of the old Remco mini monsters from the 1980s. And for a while I've wanted to pick up the rest of the major monster figures to have a complete set of the main characters. So here we have the Phantom of the Opera and the Hunchback of Notre Dame, both portrayed by Lon Chaney in the silent era. And those are part of the Super 7 reaction line. And I also picked up the Invisible Man and the Wolfman. And those were from the first release of Reaction, back when they were a joint project between Funko and Super 7. Funko dropped out of the project and Super 7 took it over entirely and have been very successful with it, although since the days of being a joint project with Funko, they have raised the prices considerably. And as you can see, the Invisible Man and the Wolfman are off the cards already. The bubbles on these had detached from the cards, so I was able to get these at a pretty good price because of that. Here are the 4 new figures with the Reaction Universal Monsters that I already had. These are all the major monsters that have been released, and I am really happy with this collection. The Star Wars Return of the Jedi Retro Collection for the 40th anniversary. We have the Biker Scout, Jedi Luke, Leia in Boushh disguise, Emperor Palpatine, Endor Han Solo, and Skiff Guard Lando. Just like the Bounty Hunters, these will all be coming off the cards because these card backs are absolute garbage. The first Star Wars Retro collection they did had a lot of problems, especially with the figures not being able to hold the weapons. They improved upon that with the first Empire Strikes Back Retro selection. So how did they do with this Return of the Jedi selection? Let's take a look. Leia in her Boushh disguise. Looks pretty good. She doesn't seem to have an issue holding that weapon. Jedi Luke can hold his weapons, although they have to be placed in a specific way in order for him to hold them. Otherwise, they do tend to become loose. And he also comes with his cloth goods cape, which fits on him like so. It is a pretty good cape. Has a nice cut to it. The fabric is good. So I'd say that's a good figure. Scout Trooper also looks pretty good. He can't hold that weapon. The paint on him is not bad, although I would have liked to have seen them release a speeder bike in the Retro collection to go with this guy. Good old Palpatine about to hit you with some Force lightning. He just comes with his cane, which fits in his hand fine. It's a little loose, but he's not dropping it. The face sculpt is pretty good. He does have the yellow inside his eyes. Endor Han with his overcoat. And here's the figure where we run into a problem holding the weapon, because they've given him the blaster with the very thick handle to fit in that hand with the very small opening. That's not happening. I might be able to heat it up a little bit to try to reposition the fingers, but that's not really in there all that securely. And Lando in skiff guard disguise. He can hold on to the weapon no problem as long as you put it in the thicker part. That's right there. If you try to have him hold the thinner handle here, it's a little bit loose. And here's his face sculpt without the helmet, which doesn't look bad. The latest and unfortunately last of the Retro 5 POA Marvel Legends line. I was quite enjoying this line and the retro feel of it, but unfortunately Hasbro has decided to give it a rest, which means it's pretty much canceled. We have the classic Spider-Woman Jessica Drew, Power Man Luke Cage, Dr. Doom, and the only vehicle to come out of the line, classic Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider and his cycle. I love when they do a classic 1970s Luke Cage. The costume does look silly in modern times, but it is a classic look. His bio on the back reads, "Sweet Christmas. When the people of Harlem find their straits to be dire, they reach out to Power Man, hero for hire." Okay, why does that rhyme? Luke Cage doesn't rhyme. Another costume that brings back memories of reading comics in the 1970s. The original Jessica Drew Spider-Woman. Star of her own animated series in 1979. Believe it or not, it's on Disney Plus if you want to watch it. And they have the original logo with the tagline, "To know her is to fear her." And I'm glad they at least got to Dr. Doom before they canceled this line. That would have been a crime if they hadn't. Looking very good in his classic green tunic, and his classic costume always includes the sidearm. And by the time this video comes out, I will have already released a feature video telling you about this classic style Ghost Rider. So if you want to know more, check my superhero playlist and you can find that video. From the Super 7 Reaction series, we have Shogun Figures Rodan, a figure that's based on the classic Mattel Rodan that was released under the banner of World's Greatest Monsters, but everyone just considers it a de facto part of the old Shogun Warriors line. Hence the branding on this figure. Very nice interpretation of the classic Shogun Warriors Rodan. His wings flap a little bit, his head can turn side to side, and his beak is articulated. He's also got articulation in the legs, but nothing in the feet. In the original Shogun toy, the talons were molded in several pieces with a elastic gimmick in them, so you could swoop down and grab figures or other toys and the talons would grasp onto them. But nothing like that in this small scale figure. I do really like the sculpt though, which seems to be pretty authentic to the original, including the coloring. Here's how he looks with some other Shogun Reaction figures, Godzilla, and Great Mazinger. The first wave of the Indiana Jones Retro Collection. I've seen both video and photo reviews of these figures and they do have some issues. But that's fine because I'm keeping these on the card. Luckily, Hasbro decided not to do with the Indiana Jones retros what they've been doing with the Star Wars retros with the terrible card backs. So these are going to be nice for display. Here is Indy with a head sculpt that looks as much like Harrison Ford as the old Kenner Star Wars figures did, meaning not at all. I believe he does have the quick draw action feature where he can pull his revolver out of the holster, but it doesn't look like that hand sculpt is going to be able to hold on to that revolver very well. And on the back we do get a nice cross-sell of the entire wave with the obligatory multilingual giant block of text underneath. Here is the Marion figure, and I've seen complaints about the way that neck attaches to the body, how it looks, and those complaints are justified. Does not look good. There is a noticeable gap between the neck and the body, and she does come with the little monkey. Here is Tote with his overcoat and his revolver, and he is able to lift his arm to do the salute, where you can see the mark of the medallion burned into it. And there is a noticeable difference between the paint on his hand and the color of the head sculpt. Belloc in his ceremonial robes. This one looks pretty good. And of course the German mechanic, who had a slight disagreement with the plane propeller, and he has his wrench. I think if I were to open these and display them loose, they would be a disappointment, but to keep on the card, I'm fine with them. There is a second wave of these at the time of this recording. They have been released, at least in the UK, and that second wave includes 2 more versions of Indy from Temple of Doom and Last Crusade, as well as Sala, Short Round, and Dr. Henry Jones. Amazing Heroes from Fresh Monkey Fiction. These 5 POA figures are done in the same style as the Mattel Secret Wars toys from the 1980s. I have previously done a video on one of these that was the Mr. Monster figure, and I've since picked up a few more. We have 2 independent comic book characters from the 1980s, Nexus the Liberator and E-Man, along with 2 figures from the all-female wave of Amazing Heroes, Bullet Girl and Queen of the Jungle. There were never any female figures made in that original Mattel Secret Wars line, so this is Fresh Monkey Fiction's interpretation of what a female figure would look like in the Secret Wars aesthetic. On the back of the cards, we get a nice file card telling us about the character and their origins and first appearance, as well as a cross-sell of all the other figures in that particular wave. Nexus and E-Man come from Series 5, which was the same wave that the Mr. Monster figure was in, while Bullet Girl and Queen of the Jungle come from Series 7, the all-female wave, as I mentioned. And Queen of the Jungle is in fact identified as Sheena in the bio card. I'm not sure why they can't put Sheena on the name of the figure. It may be a copyright issue. And at the top of each of these card backs, we get a little blurb that reads, "Transported to a strange world by a mysterious villain from beyond the stars, Earth's most amazing heroes fight their fiercest enemies in a hidden battle to save the universe from annihilation." So that's obviously playing into the original storyline from the Marvel Comics Secret Wars miniseries. The Amazing Heroes out of the package start with E-Man, who first appeared way back in 1973 in Charlton Comics. He's been around for quite some time, but you've probably never heard of him because he's had a sporadic publication history. But this is the standard Amazing Heroes body with a new paint job and a new head. We have Nexus the Liberator, first appeared in 1981. Again, the standard male body with a new head, but a really nice paint job on him. We'll look at the female figures, and most of the figures in the female wave are public domain comic book characters from the 1940s. So here is Bullet Girl, who first appeared in Nickel Comics in 1940. She is the girlfriend and partner of the Golden Age Bullet Man, not to be confused with the 1970s G.I. Joe Adventure Team member. And this character was updated by Grant Morrison in his Seven Soldiers series from the early 2000s as the character of Bulleteer. So this is Fresh Monkey Fiction's interpretation of what a female figure would have looked like in the Secret Wars style. And she does have the same 5 POA articulation. And the Jungle Queen, otherwise known as Sheena, is the only figure that I purchased that comes with an accessory. Most of the Amazing Heroes figures do not come with anything, but Sheena does have a dagger. She also has a bit of a different costume with this skirt piece that comes down to simulate her leopard print dress. And I think Jungle Queen is my favorite figure out of this selection. That's it for my retro figure haul. Do you have any of these? Are any of these on your want list? Did anything you saw in this video make you want to get some of these, or maybe not want to get some of these? I'm looking at you, Broken Phantom. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.